God, which hath brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image, or any likeness of anything that is in the heaven above, or in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them. For I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children, unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me, and showing mercy unto thousands of them that love me, and keep my commandments. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless that taketh his name in vain. Remember the Sabbath day, to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work. But the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cart, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day, and honored it. Honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, nor his manservant, nor his maidservant, nor his ox, nor his ox, nor anything that is thy neighbor.
The great controversy between Christ and Satan did not end at the cross, but continues to play out in the lives of men and women down here on earth. After the ascension of Jesus, the early struggle was between the dominant paganism of the Roman Empire and the new religion of Christianity. There was a concerted attempt to stamp out Christianity by force, with Christians made to flee their homes, stripped of their possessions, both young and old, rich and poor, free and enslaved, educated and uneducated. All were persecuted alike. Persecution began under Nero, who became emperor at the young age of just 16. He was a cruel man who had his own mother Agrippina killed, as well as his wife Claudia, and was known for his sexual debauchery. He did not live long, dying in AD 68 at the age of 30 by suicide. But before he did, he persecuted the Christians a lot. After the Great Fire of Rome of AD 64, some people accused Nero of starting the fire, and so to remove suspicion from himself, he accused the Christians. They were subjected to lots of persecution, crucifixions, being thrown to the wild animals, and being burned alive, which was not motivated by a sense of justice, but of personal cruelty. It It was during the time of Nero that many historians believe both Peter and Paul were executed here in Rome. This began decades, even centuries of persecution where Christians were killed for the pleasure of those watching. Sporting stadiums like the Colosseum behind me were commonplace throughout the empire, and where gladiatorial games would take place, and often Christians killed for the pleasure of those watching. It's claimed today by many that many Christians were not killed in this fashion, or they were only killed because they were poor or enslaved, but this constitutes a rewriting of history. Denied their full rights as Roman citizens, the catacombs afforded them a place where they could offer a Christian burial for their dead. Today they extend for miles underneath Rome, and they were a place where the Christians buried their dead with Christian symbols, and also a place where they could retreat when their life was in danger. The Christian church was persecuted a lot, but it became more resilient under more persecution. It was Tertullian who said those famous words, "The blood of Christians is seed to the gospel." The more they were killed, the more they multiplied and grew. Realizing that the Christian church could not be stamped out by force, the tactics of the enemy switched. If you can't beat them, then join them. Rome transitioned from pagan to papal. Temples dedicated to paganism were converted to Christian, such as the Pantheon here behind me. Built in 125 AD by Emperor Hadrian, it was converted to a Catholic church in 609 AD. Idols dedicated to various gods were given Christian names such as Saint Peter, and paganism walked in the front door. And in exchange, the persecution of the masses stopped. There was, however, a small and faithful minority who refused to accept this compromised and watered down aberration of the Christian faith. Today, the Christian church in many parts of the world does not suffer the persecution of this time. But Paul writes in 2 Timothy 3 verse 12 that all who live godly in Christ Jesus will suffer persecution. Perhaps today we've become too accustomed to living out our faith privately in a way that does not cause us any opposition or trouble. In many countries, Christianity is mainstream or at least accepted as part of society, but there's little real godliness on show, and the Christian church really doesn't suffer any persecution. May we be faithful in living out our lives, not in a distasteful way that brings on persecution needlessly, but living out our life with endurance and patience. And if and when persecution does come, may we bear it faithfully, knowing that Christ has suffered much more for us. As Jesus stood on the crest of the Mount of Olives looking over Jerusalem, his heart was filled with anguish and pain. Looking with divine foresight into the future, he could see the Jewish people scattered around the globe, the city lying in ruins, the temple burning, destroyed, and laid to waste. Crying out with a pain-filled heart, he said, "Oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, how often I would have gathered you as a hen gathers her chicks, but you would not." John 1 verse 11 says, "He came to his own, but his own did not receive him." After ministering for over 3 years in Jerusalem and the surrounding areas, Jesus' time on earth was coming to a close when he uttered his fateful pronouncement and warning on Jerusalem. The temple that Jesus looked down upon as he stood on Mount Olives was the second permanent structure to stand in that place. Originally, as the Israelites left Egypt, they had a temporary tent that traveled with them, and even after they got to Israel, it stood there in Shiloh and was used for 300 years. Eventually, the first temple was completed during the reign of King Solomon in 957 BC. This temple was destroyed by the Babylonians in 587 BC, and many of the vessels were carried from Jerusalem over to Babylon. After the 70 years of captivity as prophesied by the prophet Jeremiah, the Israelites were allowed to return during the reign of the Medes and Persians under King Cyrus. This temple began to be rebuilt in 538 or 537 BC after the decree of Cyrus for the Jews to return to Jerusalem. Then they encountered some local opposition which caused some delays before it was completed in 515 BC. This temple stood for over 500 years, and it was the one that Jesus visited, spoke in as a child, ministered as an adult, and wept and cried over before he was crucified. Sometimes called Zerubbabel's temple because he was the one who started the reconstruction, it was later renovated and expanded on during the time of Herod. Jesus said in Matthew 24, verse 15 and 16, that when you see the abomination of desolation stand in the holy place, let him which is in Judea flee into the mountains. When the Roman armies first came in AD 66 under the leadership of Cestius, who was the governor of Syria at the time, and planted his armies and insignia outside the walls of Jerusalem, this was still considered holy land as it extended several furlongs from the temple. He was unable to take the Temple Mount and retreated, losing over 5,000 soldiers in the process, according to Josephus. As the armies retreated, this was a sign for God's people to flee the city, and all those who heeded the words of Jesus in Matthew 24 did. They had a small window of time whilst the Romans were fighting the Jews, and they escaped to the city of Pella, located in modern-day Jordan, across the other side of the River Jordan. All those who were watching the signs escaped the later destruction. This apparent victory over Cestius emboldened the Jews with a stubbornness that would work against them 4 years later, when in AD 70, under the leadership of Titus, the Roman armies returned. Surrounding the city during the time of Passover, when it was teeming with people, only further increased the horror that was about to come. Starvation, famine, and disease quickly spread throughout the city. The natural love of children to parents to grandparents disappeared as everyone fought for their own survival. Those who tried to escape the city were captured and crucified in the walls outside until the valleys were teeming with crosses as a warning to those inside not to try and escape. Eventually the city was stormed, and even though Titus told his soldiers not to destroy the temple and personally tried to stop it even when the fire had started, the prophecy of Jesus said that not one stone would be left upon another, and this came to pass. Jesus also warned our world today of the coming crisis, and he has given us an outline of the signs of his return, that we're not left in darkness. He does not want anyone to be lost, and he's outlined exactly what will take place before he comes back, that we will know exactly the signs of his return. We can rest assured that just like no true believers were killed in the destruction of Jerusalem, so today those of us who are watching the signs will not be destroyed, but Jesus will protect us in the final days of this earth's history.